Welcome to a special Cultivated Live. I am Jay Rosenthal. This is David Côté. We're going to talk to him in a second. I'm Jay Rosenthal. This is Cultivated Live. Since we launched Cultivated, our goal has been to be industry first, give you the most timely, important, useful information as we can every day on this live stream at 10 a.m. Eastern. We also have a newsletter. We hope you get it to your inbox. So follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, get our newsletter in your inbox every day. You can find us at cultivated.news. That's where you can subscribe. David Côté.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is special. This is my front porch.
I'm so happy to be here. Honored to be invited to the front porch.
We haven't done a front porch episode since we launched Cultivated. We did a couple during COVID. It was the only, like we sat very far away from people and we had two cameras. But it's fun to do. You're always in town. You live in Toronto, but there's a couple events in Toronto. Tell us what you're doing here. Then we'll get into sort of the footprint, but tell us what you have going on this week and why we connected this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Hall of Flowers is on this week, so headed there from here. But what a great way to start.
Just one road. Take
one
south.
One road over. So it's nice to be able to stop in at the front porch on the way down. So do that, and then the RCCO on Thursday. So
that's the Retail Cannabis Council of Ontario.
Correct.
Right?
And completely different events. One event very good for the relationships that we have in retail. It is the perfect retail event in that all of the LPs are going to be there, and then the other event is far more on the regulatory side and
advocacy.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a lot going on both fronts, both with brands and retailers and with advocacy and policy and having a voice for retailers here in Ontario. And you have two brands that you oversee. So one company, J Supply Co., Northern Helm. Tell us about the footprint of your operation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 7 stores under our umbrella. There are 3 J Supply Co's. 2 of them we sold last year to OEG. So they're still operating with the J Supply Co name, but they are owned by OEG up in Thunder Bay. Just from a logistical perspective, it made more sense.
You were done. You were not going to be driving to Thunder Bay.
And you want to do a good job in your market, right? Yeah. So if you can't come to the market properly, make sure that somebody else can. And then on the Northern Helm side, we have 6 locations located along the 401 corridor. A couple in Toronto, a few in Durham region, and 1 in Kingston. So,
just for those that don't know Ontario geography, every place that you said is relatively close together, except Thunder Bay is on Lake Superior.
Yeah.
Which I think if you did drive it, it's 20-something hours driving.
You feel it.
Yeah, you definitely. Yeah, on the third day of driving, you definitely feel it. And give us a little bit of personal background and then your cannabis background to today. Because I think that the trajectory of what you're doing before, 2 times before this, is compelling background.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I've been in retail my whole career. Been lucky that I was with SC Johnson out of school and then into retail strategy with Accenture and tried to get into the operations side with RBI. So Tim Hortons US, franchising and understanding both the customer and the franchisee in that whole relationship.
You said US.
In the US.
Yeah. Different than Canada?
Very different than Canada. In that buying habits are very different in the US from a coffee perspective.
They are.
And that certainly has an impact on
what is different? Sorry, not to dive into I'm fascinated with Tim Hortons US because we drive by a bunch in upstate New York. And they look slightly different, but they feel similar when you go in, but what are the differences between the consumers that are
so upstate New York, especially Buffalo? Those were so early days that actually Tim was playing in Buffalo when I think the first one got going.
The most Canadian conversation we ever had.
Yeah, but the idea being in Canada, the majority of consumers going through a Tim Hortons drive-through are getting coffee.
Yeah.
And they're used to spending that $2 on coffee. And then the next level up, you're getting into your Starbucks, where in the US, there's a much bigger gap between the person that's spending $5 at Starbucks versus spending $1 at Speedway for their coffee. So the Tim Hortons price point was falling a little bit in the middle. It didn't have the same brand recognition. I think it's important to look at a Tim Hortons, and we all think they're ubiquitous. There's 4,000 of them in Canada. And of course, like 60 years last month that it's been around, but it took 27 years to get to 500 stores.
Right.
So there was a long haul. Like there was a long time with 10 locations.
Right.
Like they were really pushing through. They were changing up their style. They were changing up what they were bringing to market. And the U.S. needs to go through that. Cannabis industry needs to go through that. It takes a long time for that understanding of what the customer is actually looking for to push through.
And so Tim Hortons, RBI, Tim Hortons US, and then cannabis.
yeah, I was looking to somehow get involved in the cannabis space. Didn't know what that was going to look like, and I was fortunate to start chatting with the good folks at Tokyo Smoke, and they needed somebody with maybe my skill set. And like, I think that was the funny thing at the start is just you want to go.
You have a skill set. That's good.
Yeah, go do this. I don't know if the skill set actually is applicable yet, but just go work on it. And just got in with so lucky to get in with such an awesome team.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was early 2018. And then not too long after I was there, we found out when legalization was going to hit. And so then it was the race to 1017, and we were opening stores in Winnipeg. So designing those, learning the regulations as you're designing it. It's a really fun way to operate when the regulations kind of come after you've put the
Well, I was going to say, it wasn't us, just the regulators had some great game plan either.
Well, and I think in hindsight, we can look at it and say, oh, the regulators needed to do a better job. But by the same token, it's when's the last time an industry has come from nothing?
Right.
And I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, if 5 years, 6 years into this industry, we would have said, well, there's going to be billions of dollars in sales in Ontario, multiple billions of dollars in sales across the country, thousands of retail stores, and all these different products available, we'd probably chalk that up as a success. It's just been there are bumps in the road, and it's easier to see those when you're in it, and when you look back at it, it's been fun.
Well, it is interesting because I've been in other markets. You've seen other markets. You travel too. It is interesting. Like, I'm thinking specifically about New York. There are some people that have the perspective, like, zoom out enough, and with enough time horizon, it will be a success. When you're into the thick of things, like stores don't open fast enough, not enough products on shelves, too much product that's not reaching shelves, like the bumps along the way seem really bumpy when you're in it. But again, zoom out.
Bumps are expensive.
Yeah, bumps are expensive, and they're frustrating in real time. And it is a bit, the regulators aren't doing this, but then the industry isn't doing that. And then you launch, but if you zoom out enough, and this is sort of full circle, New York, but other places too. Look at California, same bumps, and now it's sort of a right sizing, let's say. But same thing in Ontario. Like, now it is rubber meets the road, where it is a very competitive market, and you're 8 stores, 7 stores, like, there's competition.
Oh, yeah,
like
definitely.
You need to find, attract, retain customers, keep them coming back. Like, that's new and different challenges than what existed to get the stores open.
100%. Yeah. And now it's retail.
Right.
Now we need to be, like, at the end of the day, retail is retail. We need to do a good job with those retail fundamentals and ensure that we're delivering what the customer actually cares about.
And actually, one of the first times we chatted, I don't even remember if it was Business of Cannabis or maybe for Dutchy or maybe even at Holoflower with the podcast, but you were talking about, and you talked about it early, identifying the customers, right? You talked about customers at Tim Hortons US being slightly different than Canada, being slightly different than the ones that grab coffee at the gas station or at Starbucks. But you talked about the customers being different for cannabis than for coffee, obviously, time of day, mindset, all of those things. And finding out that in cannabis, it's real time, right? You didn't have, there was no consumer data the day you opened.
No, and that was a fun thing when we were designing the stores and trying to figure out the staffing levels. We were looking at the best information that we had was in LCBOs and seeing the spikes in traffic. And
LCBO, I'm going to translate Canadian.
Sorry.
Our liquor stores in Ontario were provincially owned, and they have a lot of data.
Yeah, so we were looking at the provincially owned liquor stores in Ontario. We were looking at some of the Alberta locations. Just the data wasn't quite as good, just to see the behaviors, because we were assuming, and I don't think it was that far off, that just the time of consumption for cannabis versus alcohol is similar. I'm not comparing the two. It's just the use cases for the customer are very similar. So that was the information that we were running off.
Right.
But then by the same token, we were assuming that those transactions were going to be 10, 15 minutes. So you're staffing a store and you're setting up a store in that way. And it was very quick from the transaction taking 10 or 15 minutes to transaction being counted in seconds.
Yeah.
And that's in a lot of cases. And that's pretty phenomenal how quickly that turned,
and
especially with so many more products on the market.
And it puts unique pressures or unique staffing levels on how many people work the store, how fast the transaction actually happened, how long they're on the floor, like how you set, the physical space, the merchandising, the staffing, the pricing, the menu, like all those things factor into that length of transaction.
Definitely.
What is that measure called? Length of transaction or time on tap? Like, is there an acronym that you use?
I'm sure there's an acronym.
We'll have to ask Krista.
Yeah, you'll have somebody on here that's smarter than me that would track it like that, but just the time in store.
Time in store. Yeah. Time in store. TIS.
Yeah.
That's what I'm calling it now.
There's an acronym for it.
But it is this, you say now it's retail, and it is. And certainly this is what we spend Thursdays talking to Krista about. Now it really is retail. It's about pricing and inventory and keeping customers and keeping them coming back. And, how do you get them to shop either more frequently or bigger basket size? But if it's a bigger basket size, how do you retain that? Like, that is retail 101 or 201 or 301. Like, it is complicated. And I guess the challenge is balancing the skills in new markets, especially. It's a different skill to do all the regulatory box checking, which is super hard. Getting set up for day one than day 600 or 1,000, like, it's a different skill set, needs a different team. Like, how do you manage sort of that transition? And does it change all the time, even within that context?
Yeah, I think it certainly changes over time. But at the end of the day, you start looking for people that have experience in other retail.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really important. You take a step back and you say, okay, well, there are people that have had long careers in retail selling a different product. And part of why they were able to sell that product and have those conversations and engage with those customers really well is they're well trained. So great, you train them on this product and this particular set of processes, and they've already learned through experience the tough parts of being in front of a customer and managing through that relationship. Now you give them the tools and the incentives and the proper goals in mind to go have the conversation on cannabis.
I remember early days, maybe talking to you and others about what does the perfect first frontline staff look like? Like, is it people with like deep knowledge and expertise in cannabis? Is it the other extreme is like just people who are great at retail, right? And is it like, or some blending of the two? And can you build one into the other and one into the other so they're like understanding the product for sure, but also understanding the goals of the store and the corp, like how we actually want to run the operation and make money?
I would argue that the best person to have in a store is the best person that you want on any team. It's the same type of person that you're looking for. Somebody that wants to learn and is open to learning something new, because whether the scale that you just provided, whether they're on either end of that, as long as they're willing to learn and recognize that they still need to keep learning and don't overshoot their skis on that, then that's a person that you want to have on your team forever. It's that openness to learn. And when you have that openness to learn, there's the listening to what the customer is looking for.
Yeah.
Because having listening and in a meaningful way and not just like trying to force something upon, none of us like that.
Right. Think about your stores and the locations. Like, how do they differ from one to the other? And how do you assess that they are different? Or are they the ones that are along the 401 corridor, those basically act the same, but the others that are in Toronto are slightly different? Like, are there noticeable differences across those shops given geography, or maybe within the geography where the store is actually located?
Definitely. I would compare our stores in a lot of ways to how grocery has to change what their offering is. You've got the more downtown locations, so it's more set up for a quick shop.
Yeah.
You're not going in with the Costco boxes
right.
in the downtown locations. So you set up the store and you staff and inventory the store accordingly. Whereas the stores that we have, Guelph and Durham region and Kingston, they're a lot of grocery store anchored locations. So those are one-stop shops in big plazas where those plazas were already destinations. Right. So we need to do a good job of serving those guests that are there. They're parking their car one time and they're hitting a number of different stores, and that means that it will likely be a bigger shop for them each time they're in, because they're grabbing for potentially the week. And interestingly, between those stores, even some that are within a couple kilometers of each other, very different markets. So you have to have different products on hand, and you have to be ready to serve those customers the way they want to be served.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated, and this is again Canadian, but No Frills. So our grocery store down the street is called No Frills. It's part of a large sort of conglomerate in the country of the two grocery stores we actually have.
One of the largest grocery conglomerates in the world.
In the world, right? And No Frills is like their basic model of their sort of, I don't know, discount shopping, I guess. It's literally called No Frills. But even within each No Frills, this one and that one, which are on either side of it, one is in the mall and one is sort of freestanding. Like, I think 95, 96, 97% of the products are probably the same, but the 3% or the 4% is really related to the neighborhood itself, right? And like, you go to different neighborhoods in Toronto, those 4 or 5% of products are actually quite different. And that actually feels good as a consumer. You're like, oh, they understand the neighborhood and my needs. That must be similar to your customer saying, oh, they understand that I'm doing a big shop. They have the inventory, the staff, and all the setup to actually.
Yeah, and the cool thing about No Frills too is those are franchise locations.
Right.
So yeah, they have their 95 or 97% that they need to stock, but then those franchisees they know their neighborhood, or if they've been successful.
Yeah,
I would argue.
I think they're pretty successful.
Yeah, they've been successful. They know their neighborhood, and they are able to take that feedback and order very very local items. And we have some licensed stores, and those owners do a phenomenal job of knowing their market. And then our managers within the corporate side, same thing. They have a lot of latitude for ensuring that the right products are brought in based on what the customer is looking for. Of course, we want to see some consistency across the stores, because if customers are going into different stores, we're going to
It's a totally different, right?
Yeah, but the fact that a no frills is a no frills when you're in there, but it still has the neighborhood sense that phenomenal.
Yeah,
the reason why Loblaws is pretty good.
It's pretty good. You can complain about all you want, but especially on the no frill side, like it's spot on for the most part.
Yeah,
that's why we're going after them for a hockey sponsorship too.
Oh, there you
go. We'll buy all of our water there. I promise. David, it's always good to see you. And I know we live on opposite ends of the same city, but it's nice to see you in person. Thanks for coming to the porch. This will be the inaugural porch conversation.
I can't wait to see more of these.
This is a call out to anybody who is either in Toronto or would come to Toronto. You're welcome on the porch anytime. If you show up here, you're much more likely to get interviewed.
That's why I did.
No, you're welcome anytime, and we would have found you anyway. We found you in Las Vegas. We found you in downtown Toronto. We found you in lots of places, so no problem there. But if others want to come to the porch, please. This is obviously great for me, but it is nice to see people in person. I mean, I feel like it's still not COVID. The last time we did these was during COVID, but it is nice to see people face to face. Thank you for joining, David. We'll see what the other events do the next, but I won't have a camera with me. Thank you for joining us here today on Cultivated Live. You can always find everything we do at cultivated.news, get our newsletter, subscribe to us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube, or the other way around. Smash the subscribe button. Get our newsletter in your inbox every day at 7:01 a.m. if you are on Eastern time. David gets it to his inbox. It keeps him super informed. So he seems like an informed guy, so get it to your inbox. We'll be back here tomorrow, which is Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. I'll be with my co-founder and our editor-in-chief, Jeremy Burke, as we always are on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much for joining, and we will see everybody tomorrow.